assuming that you are facilitating the sprint planning or daily stand-up for your team, and the team noticed that we miss out a particular feature, it wasn't documented in the Scrum bot or the Jira bot. And you're being asked, given that you're sharing your screen as a Scrum Master, to have add that feature into the backlog, or to have add a story into a backlog, or to create a task or a subtask into a story. How are you going to go about it? All right. This is what we're going to cover today. It's a Monday morning. Time to get a bit practical and to learn more of technicality on what you do as a Scrum Master by when you manage a project, right? So welcome to the Scrum chat room with Dr. Francis Mbunya. We keep it very and easy here, guys. And definitely today, I want to give you a bit about facilitation. I'm going to be sharing my Jira bot. I'll walk you through a bit about what facilitation is all about. And then if something comes up and say, oh, can you help us create a future? Can you help us add a story? Can you help us link this tag to this tag? Can you help us clone a story? We are going to look at how you perform all of those tags on Jira today. So make sure you're staying tuned to the end of this video, because it's going to be straight to the point, a lot of learning to go with. So without wasting much time, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which is my Jira bot, and we'll go ahead and start learning. So at this point, I am in my backlog, right? So one of the things you need to understand as a Scrum Master or a Scrum Master to be is to understand or to have a feeling of what facilitating a project is all about. And this is what we do in our masterminds, right? For those who are preparing for interviews. So if you're preparing for interviews, this is one of the things you need to learn so that when you get in the job, it doesn't sound like rocket science. So it's very important. If you're in a coaching community, you're not only practicing, but you're not only practicing question and answer, but you know exactly how you can be able to create a project from the roadmap, break it down into futures, break it down into stories. That is one of the keys I teach all my students. For those who are interested in joining our mastermind community, basically hit me up, check on the description button. You will see exactly my number. You can write me up. Now, for those who are interested in our Safe Scrum Master certification, we also train you on how you can, how most of the practical stuff on Scrum relate into the practice. Our next training is going to start next Monday, so you can also join. All right, let's get straight into the point. Let's assume that you're facilitating a daily stand-up or a sprint planning, and then your team realize that they are missing either stories, either futures, or they want you to simply duplicate a story because they want to assign it to another person. How are you going to go about it? Let's start with the daily stand-up. Now on Jira, where are you going to facilitate your daily stand-up? When you say, oh, I'm going to ask my team what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, and if there's an impediment, how does it happen? Now, the first thing you want to understand is that you want to understand all the different function on your Jira board. To your left, you have the roadmap, the backlog, the axis sprint, the report, issues component. Now, for you to facilitate, this is called your Jira bot or your Scrum bot. This is the entire is called your Jira bot. Here it's called your Scrum bot, right? When you're facilitating, this is an active sprint. It shows the progress. This is also called a Kanban view. It shows a progress on what all the teams are working on and all stage in which they are. You realize here this item is already done on your Jira board, right? There's nothing already in acceptance. So one of the way to facilitate your event, always kind of say, keep it open, keep it a bit flexible. Don't always do the same thing. One of the things I always advise all my Scrum Masters to do, start from walk your screen from the right to the left. So assume that this story is being worked on by Mark or by Magdalene. What you want to do is that you want to start with this person. And then when they give their update, basically, it's also a good practice when they're giving their update, simply just click on the story so that it can pull up and they can see exactly what they're talking about, right? If this person is facilitating, click on, they can pull and see what it's talking about. And then what you're doing, you're taking note of all the challenges or impediments that might be coming up. And then you can look at how to use the meet after to address any impediment. But then the focus today is on how to create story. Let's say that we're in the backlog spring planning. Now, your spring planning, we're going to be on the backlog tab. Why on the backlog tab? Now, you realize that the first one is going to tell you that, oh, this is an active spring, right? Your first spring is going to show you that this is an active spring. So if you look at the second spring, we have not yet started it, right? So the first spring is already in progress, which is the reason why you won't see a start button here. The second spring, it shows that, oh, the button is a bit blurred, right? Because it shows that can be planned but not started until we complete the above. You see, if I pull my cursor, most of your bot is kind of self-learning. So if we do a spring planning here, and maybe we start going through our backlog and we look at say user phone, we look at it and we go through, we realize that this story has not been assigned to anybody, it doesn't have a story point. So what you normally do is that every story has a code, right? So you realize that if you click on the code, you should be able to have a full screen, and your developers should be able to go through and see if they have everything they need for this story. Acceptance criteria are not there, so they might ask you to write acceptance criteria. You might not know what it is, but they'll give you like, oh, acceptance criteria. They will just be saying it out, and you can add it on here, right? Acceptance criteria. All right, so, and then you can list them. It's a very interactive space. And when they are done, they can assign it to somebody to work on it, right? And they can do their poker planning. When they do their poker planning or pointing, they come and they can add a story point, right? They can add a story point. Say this is a 3-story point. All right, we're going to talk about story pointing in another video. And now let's say we want this to go into Spring 2. I'm going to assign this to Spring 2 right away, right here. And if we do all of this and save this, you realize that if I go back to my backlog, this item has been moved into Spring 2. Okay, now this is also one thing, something happened here, which is a very good part of learning. You realize that there is Spring 2, which is a SRA project, and there's Spring 2, which is the SP project. Now, I did not intend to create different Spring 2. What happened is that when I was creating this project, I did not pay attention. Let me just go back there again. I just want to go back there and show you what happened. All right, click here. So I did not pay attention to realize, to notice which of the project. There are several projects on this board. So I needed to pay attention to make sure that this Spring 2 is not going for the SP project. It's going for the SRA project. You see? So sometimes you may create a story or something on your board and you look for it for the next 1 year. You don't see it. Why? Because you created it, you assign it under a different project. So you always need to be very conscious the project you're creating it under, right? So it's very important. So let's say if I go back to my bot right now, I just need to refresh my page. All right, you realize that it has come back to this project, right? So that's it. Now, let's say your team asks you, oh, we missed out, there's a new feature just coming, we need to add it into our bot. How are you going to add it? On Jira, there is nothing as a feature. So that is why we always use Epic, right? Now, on this project, we are on the right project. Then you go and you choose Epic. Epic is equivalent to a feature you want to build or a sub feature, right? So let's say we're working on an Uber app and we want to create an epic, and the epic name is going to be frequent ask question, right? Let's want to do a frequent ask functionality on our Uber app. So frequent ask question. All right. Then summary should be maybe rider should have access to frequent asked question. Okay, we can go here and we do our detailed acceptance criteria and all of that. We don't want to go into that. We can set a priority here. If something that we need to start working on right away, we can put here, it's very urgent. We can choose to put what sprint we want to attach it to. Maybe I want to show all the sprint in this project. You can choose what sprint we want to assign it to, right? So, and we create the epic. Now we create the epic. When you create an epic, it doesn't go into your backlog, right? There's a menu called an epic menu, which all your epic go into. Now let's say that that was an epic we created, and I want to create a story. I want to start creating story under that epic. The easiest way is always come here, but then when you come to create, you click the story, right? Now, under frequent asked question, what are some of the sub items? Stories are more like frequent asked question are like bigger tab, right? There is more like a functionality. Epics feature are more like functions. Then stories are like, what are the items we want to see under those functions? So if you have a frequent asked question under Uber app, what are some of the questions that people might want to ask? We might start categorizing it. One of it might be fair cost, right? What's the fair cost? Or fair cost estimate. How do I know how much it's going to cost me from doing this as a summary? Now we can write a story right here. As a writer, I would like to know the estimate of my fare so that I can plan this into my budget. Okay, let's say now acceptance criteria is just more like, what are we going to see to know that the developer has completed the work? So we do acceptance criteria. Okay, some people might want to use a clear format, which is like trying to really like giving that and all of that, but in most of the cases in reality, that would really not be so much of important. You just want to make sure that so I can have an estimate given that I know the distance, right? So we should be able to know the distance. Then time zone can be another aspect which we should consider in, not time zone, like a period. Yeah, period of the day. These are kind of what some of the aspects that's going to help us. So acceptance criteria simply means that what are some of the things that will help us in order to validate that we have completed. Now, these are items that can help us kind of help the user easily calculate their time. Okay. In most of the cases, you don't have to figure it out as a Scrum Master. These are requirements that are already given to you by the Scrum Master. In a case where you act as a Scrum Master and a PO in your team, you should already have, let's say, you have a repository or somewhere where all the stories have been written, or you have the story roadmap and you can discuss it with your team or your developer. They should be able to guide you most of this. In most of the cases where you create as a Scrum Master during an event, most often you put just the main highlight and the developer goes in and do all the detailing. If they need you to do the detailing, they will obviously give you what to write. One of the stuff you can always ask them that, oh, can you put it in the chat box exactly what you want me to put in? I just want to make sure that I'm putting in the right stuff. Now, we want to create this story. We want to make sure that this story, we are linking it into the priority simply means how urgent it is, right? Let's say this is high. Now, we always want to link our story into epic. What epics are we linking this story to? Right, frequent asked question. So when you do this and you create this, you realize that the story is going to come into your backlog, right? It comes to the top. Now, this is a future frequent asked question. So I can create as many stories as possible. They are going to be added here. Now, let's look at creating a task. We want to create a task. Let's say we completed this story and we want to create a task that link to fair estimation cost, right? A task will not really be a full story. A task is simply more like something we want you to do, right? Not really like a full story. Let's say a task under creating fair might be, let's say we want to be able to say add distance uh, add distance estimate in miles, right? We want you to add this estimate in miles, or maybe you build distance estimate in kilometers. We want you to add distance estimate in miles. So the description will just be that writer be able to choose their distance in miles and in kilometers, has many options, right? So I'm going to kind of also look at this, and I might want to assign it the epic definitely will be frequent asked question. Now, when you create this, you realize that it's going to appear as a story. You realize that all of the different categories of stories or book have their own different color to indicate right here. If I go on create and I do a drop down to epic, you see that everyone has its own key. Now, let's say that I want to link up these tags into this first story to make sure that it is part of it. I'm just going to go to the story and then I can, you see here, link issue. This is a tag. I want to be able to link it to the story. If I click right here, it's block us. I'm just going to say it's related to right here, and I can search that story. It's related to, where's that story, which was let me check the story ID. It's going to be easier for us to link it to the story ID. If I know the story ID, it's easier for me to bring this. I'm just going to go one step to a backlog. The story ID, which I want to link it to, is URA21. Okay, so it's easier for me to go right here, and then I click here. I want to link this story, come here, link. It's related to, I put URA21. So you see it pulls up, then I link it up to there. So this tag is linked to the stuff. If I want to create subtag, I can create subtags here. So the subtag are going to be under this story as well. So we've learned how to create epics, we learn how to create story, we learn how to create subtags. Now let's go back to the backlog and see one item again. Let's say that during a daily stand-up, right? I'm gonna go to my active spring view. It's a daily stand-up and we are going through this story. And for some reason, we need to clone this story, right? We need to be able to clone this story. What are you gonna do? What does cloning mean? Cloning means that we need to duplicate the story. Now, if you always click on this, on your three dots, you can see more options. Clone. Clone simply means that I want to duplicate this story. Now, it shows clone. Most often, we take the clone away. Maybe we want to clone the story for our back-end developer. Or let's say the back-end, we're working on it and we want to clone the story for a front-end developer. Right, I come here, clone story, front-end developer, I clone. Now, when you clone a story, what happens is that it's not going to stay within this sprint. It's going to go into your backlog. All right, so if you go to my backlog, you realize that all clone story always go to the bottom of the backlog. Now realize I can click on this story and I ask the command move to the top of the backlog, right? So that it's ready. I can easily prioritize it for my next sprint. Now, what is the case if we need to use the same story within the sprint? We realize something we want to add within the sprint. Let's say we wanted to do a rider caption and we realize we need to build some code. We say, okay, we need to create another story. Now, when I come to clone right here, I'm going to choose this option, clone spring value. In that case, it will not go to my backlog. It will stay in my sprint. So I'm closing right option. I'm putting back end coding or back end, or I can just put API. So I click on here. Now see the difference. The difference is that it comes to my I'm looking for that one. Let me refresh my bot so that we can see that. Okay, so you see the one I rider option API. This is a story I clone because I clicked there that value screen. I check that box, right? It comes right here, which is something which is urgent. But then and now it was 8 point. Maybe this one I don't want this to be 8 point because it's just a clone. I can come and I change the point. Maybe it's just a 3 pointer for develop to work on. I probably might want to reassign it to another person. So we've kind of done quite a number of stuff right here. This is how you're able to assist your team navigate. And this is exactly what we teach all our students for practicals, for those who want to be serious about knowing exactly what to do before they get on the job. Just send me a message, right? Send me a message. Check on the description. You're going to see my contact. It's like the first line out there. Send me a message. Say, hey, Dr. Francis, I'm interested to be part of your community. We have like huge discount. Our end of year sales are up there. And we also have like great team members or we have focus group. You work on real project group. This is one of our projects, but we're working on an Uber ride app so that you can see how that project is conceptualized from the point where the management or the point where decision makers are taking a decision on what they want to add in the app, right down to where management and right down to where the team start building it. All right. I hope we did learn something today about the Jira board. And I'm going to see you on Wednesday, and we're going to continue with the conversation. Do have a great week, and I will see you on Wednesday. Do not forget, Scrum is all about continuous learning, and I want to see you at the top.